bases dropped on a new edition of Soccer Down Here. It is a Friday. It is June 19th, and we got a lot of stuff to get into today. All around the world, as usual. Lots of games to talk about, lots of games to preview, but also some news here in the U.S. with Major League Soccer. A player from Atlanta United, a player from Inter Miami has tested positive for coronavirus. 2 players in the league since the return to full training. FC Dallas and DC United had players test positive in the previous phase. DC United have not heard an update on if that player has returned to training. In Dallas, according to the Third Degree, that player has returned to training. This just happened yesterday with Atlanta and Miami. The protocols are everyone gets tested again, and remember, they're testing every other day right now, so this is, I don't know if this was the day to get tested or not, but everybody is getting tested again as a result of this, and this is why you have the process. This is why you have the protocols. This is why you are set up to do things in the way that you are. This is not an easy thing to deal with. This is something that, as we saw with the goalkeeper at Bournemouth, who had tested negative, tested positive. He said he had been out to the store. He went out to the shop. That's why there's just so much. There's so much need to be careful. And this is whether you're a pro athlete, this is whether you're an average person, it's whether you're a listener, this is whatever you do. This is out there, and there's just no way around it. The environment that Major League Soccer and other professional leagues have set up is to try to protect these players as much as possible, try to limit any kind of spread of the virus. And that's the one thing that all this testing and all the protocols are doing. The other thing that you have to keep in mind here, and this was something that the British government came to the conclusion of after a study, and other countries have followed suit. The risk of transmission in soccer activities is, by definition, low. You're not standing next to a player on the field for an extended period of time. Now, training is a little different, and that's a question with these two situations. What has the training looked like? How many players has these positive tests, these positive players? How many players have they been around on a regular basis? That you're doing the contact tracing, which is going to be part of it. You're going to try to get to the bottom of it. But this is why you test. And I think the number one thing you have to keep in mind, when you look at how this has gone in other leagues, other countries, the reason we talk about it so much is we're all kind of establishing a baseline of information and of knowledge here. And you haven't seen 2 tests like this in a round of tests turn into 5, 10, 15. You haven't seen that happen in other teams around the world who have been training, who have had positive tests in a training environment. So, I know the initial reaction from some is to freak out and say, this is why you can't play sports. I just have to disagree with that. This is why you have to be careful. This is why you have to be vigilant about protecting yourself and the people around you. Because you can be in a situation like these athletes and be protected in ways that your average person is not, especially with the amount of testing, but also all the protocols at their job to try to protect them from anything like this. But as Jurgen Klopp has said, as other managers have said, as other clubs have said, players have to go to the grocery store. Players have to go put gas in the car. Players have families who interact with people, kids. You can't be wrapped in bubble wrap and do this. It's impossible. And I think we've also come to the conclusion, and I don't think there's too much pushback on this, of the world can't be put in bubble wrap either. There's only so much you can do. There's only so much you can do to avoid this completely. You have to be vigilant about limiting risk. But if you get it, and in this case, you have 2 players who have, you are doing all of the protocols, all of the things to protect the rest of the group, but you're also making sure that these players are okay. And in the Atlanta United press release, the player was described as asymptomatic, no issues physically. And that's what you hope for, because that is the predominant way this virus happens. People get it. People might not know they have it. People might feel a little under the weather. That's the typical case. And that is another thing you have to remember when we get scared, when we hear this stuff, and it's like, oh no, a player's sick. A player's sick, and you don't want it to spread. But the player's not sick in the terms of going to the hospital or showing symptoms even. This stuff's complicated, and this stuff is scary, and this stuff is difficult for any kind of a organization that has people interacting with one another. It's very difficult for any organization to deal with. But this is why you have the rules in place, and this is why they are going about things in a very deliberate manner. And this is what you have to deal with. It's better to have it now. It's better to have this happen in this situation. You learn from it. You try to figure out what could have happened here, and you try to figure out if there's ways you can mitigate that. This is a learning process. This is a learning opportunity for all the teams. In MLS, since the beginning of this, you've had 5 positive tests. One was way back at the end of March. Kasper Shabilko, he came out later and said that he tested positive. The other 4 players have not been identified. One from Dallas, one from DC in the first round of training where you were socially distant. I think both were in the individual training phase, then not even that group distanced training phase. And now Atlanta and Miami have each had 1. When you compare those numbers across the board to what we're seeing in other leagues, maybe a little below average, but fairly typical. The Premier League seems to have 1 positive or 2 positives pretty much every round of testing. Championship, it's about the same. We haven't heard numbers from Germany in a while, which if there was an outbreak, we would have heard about. Spain, we haven't heard any since the early rounds of it, but all of them were basically around this. Does that mean that you don't have mistakes happen? No. Look at Rostov in Russia, for example, 6 positives, and that forced the team into quarantine. You've got to wonder what in the world's going on at the University of Texas, where they had 2 positives, and now I believe they have a couple dozen players that they are concerned about. And they are reportedly doing the socially distanced workouts, reportedly, but you have to wonder how that spread happens the way that it did. The leagues that have gotten back to play, you have not seen outbreaks, even with isolated positives. And that's the information that I think is important when it comes to Atlanta and Miami. Just because you have a positive, as we saw with the Utah Jazz, the very beginning of all this, you had 2 players test positive out of that, Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell. Don't know who had it first, but it didn't spread. In a basketball environment where they were on the road together, there were none of the protocols that people are talking about now that you do with your team. None of that was in place. You had 2 players test positive out of that team. There wasn't a widespread issue. There wasn't the fear that people had when Rudy Gobert's his positive came out. It didn't spread to other teams. It didn't spread throughout the league. You have to keep those things in mind here. And as we've talked about all week, the bubble environment and what's going on in the rest of Orlando and the county, which the numbers are going up, but when you start to put the full context to it, you can't allow yourself to get scared by a number. You have to understand the number. All of this is manageable. All of this is scary, but all of this is doable if you are vigilant, if you are following instructions, if you do everything when there is a positive that happens. And that's what happens here. So we'll see how this goes. Everybody's going to get tested. Everybody's going to move forward. And this is the reality we're all living in right now. Because this can happen at an office place. This can happen at a factory. This can happen in a school, any job that you have where people interact, these are the risks at the current time, and you have to manage them properly.
No, that's bottom line. That's why you have these protocols in place. That's why you have all of these elements that are laid out to make sure that you can be as safe as possible, and that if you end up with a positive test, you have protocols and you have a guideline that you can sit there and go forward to make sure that it doesn't spread and it doesn't amplify as quickly as it can. So that's bottom line. That's why you have the testing as consistently as you do. That's why you have the protocols in place as consistently as you do, and that's where we are.
Have any tweets about this? Because I'm sure there were a few from yesterday.
Daniel Price is actually back in this morning.
Yep, talked to Daniel a little bit last night. He is back in the mix in the mornings.
And he says he's back from the dead. He's excited for a show today. His thoughts, he really is happy that they aren't disclosing who's tested positive. Unlike the rest of the world, everyone deserves their privacy.
The rest of the world's not either. The leagues and the teams are not disclosing it. Media might find out and then report it, and that could happen here too. But nobody's disclosed it from a league level. It's been a situation like the one at Stoke City's manager. Like, that came out through the media. That didn't come out from the league. So, yeah, here it's law. You can't disclose somebody's medical information. So the league, the teams can't do that. Now, if the media finds out and then reports it, well, that's a different conversation.
Shiva wants to know, do you know the team protocol now that there is a positive case? Does he have to stay away for 14 days, or can he come back as soon as he tests negative?
It's not one negative, I believe. Man, all these different protocols float around in my head because they are all different. I believe MLS is on the 7 days and 2 negative tests type of return to play. That would seem to follow what happened in Dallas because it was not a full 14-day period. But I do think it's more than one negative test because they're doing a lot of this testing to make sure that players are not having a false result on a test. So the NWSL, by the way, had a positive test as well, and their protocol is a full 14 days. If you are asymptomatic and test positive, you can start individual workouts after 10 days. But that... more leagues are going away from that. More organizations are going away from that. More are going towards the more of a 7-day, 2 negative, because if the testing is there and you're getting multiple negative tests, why are you still sitting out another week or 10 days or whatever?
Right.
That's where more people are going. The NWSL right now is 14 days, and that's going to affect potentially what the rosters look like for the NWSL Challenge Cup, because you have a player who's tested positive, 14 days takes you into the tournament. So are you going to have them travel? And I don't know. I don't know what that situation is going to look like. MLS is not a mandatory 14 days. I think it's 7 and 2 negative tests. It might just be 2 negative tests. We're not 100% sure. I'll try to clarify that.
And right now, if anybody else has any questions, that's what the timeline's for. Any questions about anything, that's what the timeline is for. But those are the early ones when it comes to the Atlanta United positive test from yesterday.
Being yelled at by Michelle on Twitch for not having a Norwich scarf up anywhere behind me. Yeah, I'm going to have to get one of the 2020 English Championship Norwich scarves for next season. So I will. I'll work on that, Michelle. Kevsey said it was expected to some extent that players would test positive prior to leaving. That's why the protocol said those who do would be retested. It's all about retesting. It's all about consistent testing to make sure that you don't have an outbreak. That's what all of this is about. That's what all these protocols are about. It is about identifying and limiting. I think some have this idea, and maybe it's coming from people who have big megaphones that shouldn't, that testing equals spread. No, testing is identification. And testing is there to prevent it spreading. And it's to identify who might have been infected by that person. That's it. That's what testing is there for. Testing doesn't treat. Testing doesn't help you, have a vaccine. It doesn't do that. It identifies. And that's the number one thing here. And that's you have to have the information to know how to handle these things. If you have an outbreak in a group of people who are going to be around one another, you want to identify the person who is positive and separate them and treat them separate and make sure everybody else is good. Because it doesn't just one person has it and there's 30 people hanging out. Okay, now all of a sudden all 30 people have it. No, that's not how it works. We've learned that by now. But are those 30 people at more risk than your average person who hasn't been exposed to anybody with it? Yes. And you have to identify that, and you have to handle it.
Daniel admits that he feels bad that they all have to be tested. That test, if they get the standard one, is not very pleasant, using the hashtag brain scrape.
Yeah, that's a little exaggerated. Ian Poulter showed his test as he was getting ready for the PGA Tour event, and I think he almost gagged a little bit. But
yeah, I mean, you have to take that swab and get it to the point to where you are tearing up at point of contact. That is not pleasant.
Yeah, well, my sinuses are broken to begin with, so yeah, that would not be pleasant at all. You're gonna get, just like we've talked about throughout all of this, you're going to get these situations where this happens, and if you're not paying attention to all of the news, to all of the developments, to all of the protocols, you hear this and it's scary. It's terrifying, and it's like, okay, now everybody's going to get sick. No, we've learned that's not the case. Now this player's not going to be able to play for a month. No, we've learned that's not the case. Nobody can be safe. No, we've learned that's not the case. You still have to do all the things that you put in place. You didn't create a 40-page or 50-page or 80-page or however many pages the things have league to league. You didn't create all of that with doctors, with medical professionals, with government agencies. You didn't create all that because you just wanted to, print some documents and use some paper and some staples. You did that because it's vetted, because it's shown results. It's why you have right now live baseball from Korea. This game will never end. It's 18-10.
Wow.
It's why you have the Korean Soccer League, the K-League playing. This is why you have the Bundesliga playing. It's why you have La Liga playing. It's why you have the Premier League playing. It's why you have Serie A playing this weekend. It's why you have all these leagues who are doing all of this testing and all these protocols playing and being able to continue to play. Because you can do it. Not in the way that we're used to, but you can do it even when you have a positive test. And what this hammers home to me is this. If you are very careful, and I would expect a lot of athletes are going to be very careful. Are you going to have some who are reckless? Yeah, we've seen it. But in general, these guys want to play. They want to perform, especially in the MLS situation right now where they haven't been able to do that for a long time and they're getting very close. They want to play. They're listening to everything they're being told to mitigate risk. There's still risk. Even if you mitigate all the risk, there is still risk. There is risk anytime you're out around people that you don't know if they're clear or not. You have no way of knowing that. You go to the store, there's risk. You have to be careful. That's why there's just no reason at all now not to wear a mask. There is no reason at all to argue that anymore. I think it's understood. If you don't understand it, go read the report from the Washington Post about the two hairdressers in, was it Kansas or Missouri? It was in the Midwest, who tested positive, and everybody freaked out because they had, between them, 130-something clients in the days before they got their positive test. None of them tested positive. The first person, or whichever one of the two, one of them tested positive. The other coworker tested positive. They were wearing masks. The people getting their haircut were wearing masks because that was the rule. That was the requirement to reopen. None of the people getting haircuts tested positive. Everybody assumed that was going to be a massive outbreak. Why wasn't it? Well, I think you have a pretty clear set of information now that if people are wearing masks, you lower the risk of spread. Doesn't make it 100% guaranteed, but it helps. And you can find more reports. You can find them. They're out there. Wearing a mask is not a political thing. It is a safety thing. And what this should show you, in my opinion, is no matter what you do, no matter what kind of situation you're in, no matter how much you're tested, all those things, you're still running risk because this is a virus that is easy to spread, period. It just is. So you have to be careful. You have to do all the things you can to be safe and smart. And if that means we have to wear masks, if that means we have to eventually, if we have to wear gloves, if we have to think about face shields, all the different things, that's where we're at. Because this is something we've never seen. This is something you have to be careful about. Pro athletes, who in general are very careful about what they do and how they handle, they don't want to get sick ever during a season. Well, even they're getting sick. Small numbers, very small numbers, but yes, it can happen. It can happen to anybody. The testing is identifying it so it doesn't spread. But it can happen to anybody. So we all have to be careful. So just keep that in mind. Just be careful out there. That's what we have to do right now.
Daniel is digging the quarantine beard on you. He says he's working on one himself. And Katie Weaver, 2 summers ago, we're caught up in the rush of our team in its second season. Could you have predicted you'd be spending the majority of shows doing #public health down here?
Mm-mm.
Oh,
no.
What do you have this morning?
Cherry Coke Energy.
Okay.
Tranquilo. Man, we come on and John's like staring into the screen, like getting up close to the camera like a weirdo, staring to see what shirt and hat I'm wearing, and now he's doing the same about what I'm drinking. Man.
It's the daily thing.
Nosy.
Morning.
And yes, I'm wearing a Greenville Triumph shirt, and that's to celebrate what they have done to raise money in their community. They've done awesome work here lately to benefit the community in Greenville with the United Way, and I wanted to support them. They, I thought Chris Ashley would go nuts about that, and I'm wearing the hat that Chris Ashley sent me as well for his podcast. So, look, Greenville's led the way, I think, in a lot of ways here about how to handle this kind of situation. And this has been... I've been really bothered in some ways about how this conversation has gone in this country about dealing with all of this. And this is one reason we've talked about Aberdeen so much and some other clubs where smaller clubs, bigger clubs too, don't get me wrong, bigger clubs are going to lose money too, but smaller clubs especially, look, they want to play games because they want to survive. There's only so much you can do when you're not playing games. I mean, Aberdeen now is having to talk about cuts. Hibernian's talking about cutting their academy in Scotland because they can't afford it. They can't afford it. You've got teams that have had players who took deferrals who now they're probably going to have to take pay cuts on top of it. And the conversation here has been, no, you can't play because somebody's sick, and no, we're mad about pay cuts, and we're mad. Instead of channeling that energy, and it's not across the board, but the energy has to go to, hey, this is a business. This is a team in Greenville, or this is a team in Statesboro, or this is a team in Chattanooga. This is a team in, name it, that can't operate right now. They have no revenue. They have no money coming in. They have staff. They have players. We have to support them. Why are teams selling cardboard cutouts of fans? Because they need some revenue. Why are teams trying to find ways to create a new shirt to sell or a new kit to put out? Because they need revenue. For whatever reason in this country, and maybe it's just because we're not used to seeing teams get to this stage or go away. It's not regular, although at the lower divisions of soccer, people should understand that. It's not about, that owner's got a bunch of money. They should just be fine. They have no revenue coming in. They have a lot of money because they're a smart businessman. or businesswoman, and they don't want to lose a bunch of money. It's time to rally around these clubs. Whether the USL Championship comes back and plays 24 games or 30 games or 12 games, the USL League 1, same. The USL League 2, the NPSL teams, the UPSL teams, NISA, all of it. Rally around your team. Stop pointing fingers at stuff. Rally around your team. Support them. Buy a shirt. Buy a hat. Buy a scarf. Do a fundraiser for the players. Do a fundraiser for the staff. Do a fundraiser for somebody and try to support them now instead of, yelling about the league structure. Like that became the conversation in USL, and I'm just sitting there like, man, these teams are going to go away and people aren't even going to see it coming.
Yeah.
So if you've got the means, pick your favorite lower division team and go buy a shirt, buy a scarf, spread the word. If you are a supporters group with a lower division team, put together a fundraiser for the staff who probably have been at least, on reduced hours.
Yep.
Put a fundraiser together for the players who knows what their contracts are going to look like. Luckily, USL Championship anyway, the talk is that they're not going to see a pay cut. That's one of the only leagues in the world that's not going to have a pay cut. Like, not kidding. Major League Baseball, those players are not going to get their full contract. They're not. MLS, they're not going to get their full contract. A lot of Premier League clubs, they're not getting their full contract. La Liga, not getting their full contract. USL Championship, they're going to get their full contract. That's not easy to do when you might not have any revenue coming in, or you might be able to have 500 people show up, and that's not your full revenue. You're not going to be able to get what you expected, and you're still going to have to pay out the same amount that you expected. Support these clubs. Support your club, whatever level it is. If you've got the means to buy a shirt, to buy something from the club, buy it from the club. Go to the club shop.
Yep.
Send an email. Do it if you can, because you're going to wake up one day, and I went through this when I was in college. You're going to wake up one day, and the team that you love, there's going to be an announcement, maybe in the paper, maybe on Twitter, that, yep, they're going out of business. And you can see it coming right now. Like, you can see it because of how this is going with revenues. Understand that. Rally around it. It's time to stop pointing fingers. It's time to do something. It's time to do something with all this. And I know Joe Johnstone's done a lot for his favorite local club, DeKalb County United. Pick one. Pick two. Whatever you can do. If you have a team that you care about. Yeah, I mean, Chris Ashley does a ton in Greenville to spread the word, not just about Greenville Triumph, but about Greenville FC as well, who had already announced they were going on hiatus. You want them to come back. You want to see them back in the NPSL. Asheville City was moving over from NPSL to USL League 2. That's a big move, and now you're stuck without revenue right now, and you don't have a season, and what does it look like going forward? And a lot of these clubs have started doing things like Aberdeen has, where they're reaching out to the community, and they're doing great community programs. Those are the types of things that could get cut. So this is a time to really rally around it, not yell and point fingers and be negative and be cynical. You want lower division soccer to exist. It's time to
be a part of it.
It's time to step up. So Greenville Triumph has been great to us. They've always, had people available to us. We've had numerous interviews with them. They do great work in their community. I want to see that continue. If I can buy a $20, $25 shirt and wear it on a show and people see it, cool. That's what I can do. So do what you can, because these clubs and youth clubs, small clubs, major clubs, everybody's struggling right now. Just a fact. There's no way around it.
Daniel says no revenue equals bankruptcy, and we close our doors. Even if an owner has a lot of money, a lot of it's tied up in net worth and the overall value of what they own. They don't have oodles of cash under their mattress.
Yeah, and their net worth is going to decrease too. I mean, I saw something about Vince McMahon recently, and he had the XFL on top of it, but he, because of all of this, I think beginning of the year, I think his net worth was something like $2.9 billion. Yeah. And now it's went down by $1 billion. Like, his net worth has dropped by $1 billion because he had to shut the XFL because of the coronavirus, because of where they were in it. I mean, they were like 2 weeks in, 3 weeks in. I think 2 weeks in.
The XFL?
Yeah.
No, they were halfway through their season.
Which is like what, 4 weeks in? I mean, it wasn't a long season.
It's like a 10-week season, but they were like through game 5 or something.
Oh, okay. I didn't think they got that far. Anyway, they couldn't continue because of all this, so they had to shut the season and shut the league. Yeah. And you didn't have the revenue from a WrestleMania, from other pay-per-views, from any live events. You've had the same level of expenses, and you've had no revenue. So even something like that, huge, that net worth is going to go down. The liquid money you got, it's going to be non-existent. Just like people rallied around local restaurants, went out, bought from local restaurants, did the takeout thing. That was a big thing a lot of people did early on. Rally around your local soccer clubs. Rally around your local soccer clubs because they need it too. Because they're local businesses. Mm-hmm. Even as big as an Atlanta United is, as small as a League Two team is, as small as your local amateur team that plays in your local league. Anybody who is losing revenue right now is at risk. So, do what you can. If you care about the community, if you care about the soccer world, do what you can to help it because it needs it right now. All sports do.
All right. Breaking news out of MLS.
Breaking news out of MLS. You could have cut me off at any point during that.
That's all right. No, you were speaking truth.
Yeah, it happens sometimes. Hold on. Since we already held the breaking news, it can wait a minute till we pull it up if my computer would cooperate.
Okay.
Scrolling. Boom. Not boom. It went somewhere else, but you heard it, sort of. What is it?
Did. Over 70 blisses from Jeff Carlisle. Over 70 black Major League Soccer players announced on Friday the formation of a new organization called the Black Players Coalition of MLS, otherwise known as the BPC. In a statement, the BPC said it will, quote, will address the racial inequalities in our league, stand with all those fighting racism in the world of soccer, and positively impact black communities across the United States and Canada, end quote. On a video conference call with reporters, Toronto FC defender Justin Morrow, who is the organization's executive director, said the BPC's goals are threefold: to have a voice in all racial matters as it relates to MLS, increased black representation in MLS Players Association, as well as the highest levels of MLS, and to have an impact in black communities. BPC will lobby for initiatives like implicit bias training and cultural education courses, while its community efforts will include targeted spending, educational advancement initiatives, and mentorship programs. They have secured $75,000 so far in charitable contributions by the MLSPA on behalf of the coalition.
It's awesome, and you need somebody to speak out to this. The soccer world in this country hasn't had enough of that. You have a group within the United Soccer Coaches, which was the former NSCAA, of black soccer coaches. You have a few other groups like that, but there hasn't been enough at a major level. And this is why we talked about it when we talked about MLS coming back. This is an element to it. Having that platform to be able to speak on these situations. It's a lot easier when you're playing and when you're, up front, on TV about it, and you can do this. That came across on the scroll here on ESPN, which is great. To get that kind of level of exposure for this, that's going to help it grow. It is for me, and we've got a 1v1 coming later today with Rod Underwood. Rod, somebody I met years ago, is from Atlanta originally, has been a coach with the Portland Timbers in the USL, has been an academy director and assistant coach with the Sacramento Republic under Preki in their USL days. Has worked professionally in Trinidad and Tobago, in Jamaica, has worked in the college game, has worked in the youth game, played professionally back in the gap time between the NASL and MLS. And Rod and I talked about a lot of this, and I thought Rod had some brilliant takes on it and kind of what needs to happen next. A lot of the 1v1s I've been doing lately have been about what's next. And with Rod, a lot of it was, exposure, talking about things that we haven't talked about in this game, in the world on a regular basis. These are all very, very good and they're needed. Action. what is next? What can we do, not just to talk about it, but to do something about it? And none of us have all the answers, because this is not an easy thing to fix overnight. But we have to start doing, and that's going to be the key. So be on the lookout for that with Rob. It ran long. We went about an hour. Typically our 1v1s are 20, 30 minutes. Rod and I just kept talking, and we looked down at the clock, and I'm like, man, I kept you way too long. But Rod's a really, really smart soccer guy who gets it at all the levels. It's coming from a former player perspective, coming from a coaching perspective, coming from an administrative perspective, coming from an outreach perspective, coming at it from all of those angles, because they're all different. They're all different. And that's what I hope with this organization that the players have created. I hope that they find the way to get to the outreach component on the ground. And they've got to find the right people to be able to implement that in the league cities where these players are, to get them out into the community. One of the things I talked about with Rod that I'll always remember, and something that I was really proud of how it turned around, was we started a program on the west side of Atlanta in conjunction with the Blank Foundation right after the team was announced. This was with Soccer in the Streets. And it was during the summer of 2014 as the World Cup was coming together. And we started a program over at the John Hope Community Center. And 20 minutes into the first session, one of the kids didn't want to play, and he stopped me and said, why are we doing this? And I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, don't you know black kids don't play soccer? And in his neighborhood, no, they didn't. There was no league. There was no access. There was no opportunity for kids to play. And, I showed him a picture of Josie Altidore with a U.S. kid playing in that World Cup, and said, yes, they do. And they're not just from other countries. They are from here. And he ended up being a kid who really fell in love with the game. And, just access. Access is the biggest thing with a lot of this. And that's what I hope that this organization does, is they change that conversation about access and creating opportunities, and give more people an opportunity to play, to coach, to referee, to be administrators, to create more access to communities that in the American soccer world, and honestly this is a worldwide thing, it's not even just an American soccer world thing, it needs to change everywhere. Here it absolutely can change, and there needs to be advocates for that, and this group will absolutely advocate for change. It's a good thing, and I'm glad that they've taken this initiative on, and I'm excited to see where it goes.
BPC board members Ray Gaddis, CJ Sapong, Quincy Amarqua, Kendall Waston, Jeremy Abobasi, Sean Johnson, Bill Hamid, Jalil Anibaba, Kai Kamara, Ikapara, Earl Edwards.
Excellent.
And the MLS, in a statement, MLS proudly recognizes and supports the Black Players Coalition of MLS, a group of players who today on Juneteenth have established themselves as influential change leaders. And then they have another paragraph after that. So good stuff from MLS. Good
stuff from the players. I
mean,
the MLS part's a given, as it should be. The players doing this is what the good stuff is.
Yep.
That's what's needed, and we'll get more of that as we go, because, look, the game's having conversations that it hasn't had before. We've mentioned it from FIFA. We've mentioned it in the different countries. Got to keep going. Got to keep pushing, and got to keep changing, because, it's very easy to relax and just let it go back to where it was. That's not acceptable anymore. So I hope it changes. I mean, to see what Fafa Pico said. I don't know if you guys saw this. Fafa Pico was with Cagliari in Italy as a teenager, and this was from FC Dallas, from a conversation that FC Dallas put out publicly. I mean, he talked about the reserve team coach of the club calling him a monkey, telling him that they have he has no technique, he's just fast, we brought you here to run. Just crazy stuff. Just crazy stuff that, this is not just an American thing. This is now spreading to a worldwide conversation about what's right and wrong. And that's, again, excellent. And it has to result in change. It can't just be talk. It has to result in change. And that's what this group is going to be working towards, which is great to see. And I hope it can change in all those players who are involved. I hope they can have an effect on multiple people in their areas, because that's how it's going to continue to change. It's think global, act local.
Yep. Chiefs coach Steve is in this morning.
What's up?
He says, here's a question I've not heard asked before.
Okay.
How you doing?
Okay. I mean, it is what it is. Waiting to see what's going to happen with everything. We're waiting on an MLS schedule to know what that looks like for Atlanta United. And Sam Stejskal had an update to his column. There was a little bit of confusion as to how everything was going down. ESPN can't sub-license the product because they don't own it. It's MLS's product. ESPN is being paid to produce it, and it's not so much in that there's not a money dispute about the production. It's just that ESPN is not telling Fox to pay more money. It's MLS who owns the product. So ESPN can't sublicense it. Fox, ESPN, Univision are all dealing with the league on this. So that makes it honestly a little bit easier to sort out, because the league can set their numbers for whatever they want to set. If the league wants to subsidize some of that production cost for a Fox, for an Univision to get this done, they can. They have that option because it's their property. And ESPN just has set whatever their number is going to be, and they have to be paid for that, and the league is handling that. So there you
go. More breaking news, this time out of the USL.
Breaking news. Got it right this time. What is it?
Paragraph. The USL Championship and the USL Players Association announced today that they've reached a formal agreement on a return to play for the 2020 season. The two sides are now actively preparing for a July 11 restart to the 2020 championship season and will resume negotiations on a historic first collective bargaining agreement in the coming weeks. End of statement.
The CBA part's huge. The short term, there was more on The Athletic from Jeff Reuter about it. He got a copy of the internal documents on the protocols. The testing part's a little different, and I'm assuming that it comes down to cost. I'm assuming that's a big part of it. It's going to be weekly testing. There's going to be a test done 3 days before a match. That's what the Pac-12 is talking about as well, and that is less than we're seeing in the leagues in Europe. So you do wonder, okay, if you're doing less testing, if somebody acquires the virus, are you going to identify it quick enough to prevent an outbreak? That is a concern. But there's also a cost concern. You can't, I think too often in all of this, and this is where a lot of my frustration has been, it is either you're talking only from a medical utopia or only from a business utopia, and neither one exists, because they do go hand in hand. Can these teams afford to do testing every other day? Probably not at $100 a pop.
Yeah,
they wouldn't come back. And again, the players are not taking a pay cut. Not a whole lot of second divisions are coming back around the world, to be honest. A lot of lower divisions are not coming back. Some first divisions aren't coming back. So, they're having to weigh that. They're having to measure that. But Jeff Reuter, great work getting this and breaking it down to where we can all understand it. The testing in USL, very simple. 3 days before the resumption of contact training, all test results have to be reported. Once training resumes, players take tests every 2 weeks. That's the one that I'm like, wait a minute, I don't really get that. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah.
3 days before any game, including scrimmages, they can scrimmage with MLS teams. They can scrimmage with championship teams and League One teams, who also have to be tested in the same way. Once league games resume, PCR tests will be weekly occurrences. You've got the screening, you've got the daily questionnaires, you've got the 100.4 degrees Fahrenheit temperature. Anybody above that will be sent home. but it's a little bit less on the testing. There's a lot of travel protocol because you're going to be playing in home markets. So the travel component for USL is different. And they're going to be the first team sport to come back in home markets. You know, the NWSL going to Utah. MLS will be in Orlando through early August. USL, if they come back on July 11th, like they had talked about, they're going to be the first to play in home markets. Maybe not in home stadiums, but in home markets. And that increases protocols you need because you've got to have how you travel. I mean, if one thing is any travel under 500 miles required to take place by bus. So San Antonio to Tulsa, just over that threshold. Tampa to Birmingham, just over that threshold. San Diego to Sacramento is 504 miles. Maybe they'll get a waiver. I don't know. It's to the point that you're setting diagrams for how people are sitting on the bus. You know, that's where you have to get to when you're doing all this. So this is not easy to do. And even Major League Baseball with all of their fights, what I wonder for them, and maybe they have this stuff already agreed to, maybe it's only about the money, but the way their arguments have gone, I feel like they don't even have this stuff done yet.
Yeah.
I feel like you're going to, if they ever figure out 60 games, 70 games, why don't we do 65? Well, no, we can't do 65 because that doesn't make anybody happy. Well, shut up. Have they even got to this point? Once you get that nailed down, have they even got to, okay, how do you travel?
Doesn't get that feel.
What's the testing procedure going to look like? We'll see. We'll see. They're just continually blowing my mind with their ridiculousness. But we'll see. We'll see what this looks like. USL does talk about fans. Local governments, it's going to be down to that. If they are allowed to have fans, USL has best practices and requirements for it. Some will. Some potentially will day one. I think everybody will be limited, it's sounding like, but it's not definite. And then you also get to the point of, yes, it's allowed, but will every team do it? And we don't know. Oklahoma City Energy has said they will. And as we're seeing in Oklahoma, YOLO, whatever. Just, have a big event. It's fine. Yeah. Texas has talked about opening, but I don't know where they are in terms of percentages of being open. California, USC's athletic director said they're planning on reduced attendance. Miami Dolphins have talked about that. Ohio State talked about that at one point. UGA's athletic director said they were planning on full attendance. Mm-hmm. It's different everywhere. USL is a little different because generally you're talking about, on average, 5,000-6,000 people. Is that doable easily for some? Yeah, depending on your venue. Is it going to be hard for some? Yeah, depending on your venue. Because some of the venues are not going to be easy to do this in because they're small, because they're tight, and that's what you don't want in the situation. Fans will be asked to wear masks in areas where social distancing is not possible. There's a lot on coming into the stadium and leaving the stadium. Even to the point of giveaways, they don't want them unless it's something about face masks or hand sanitizer. Then give them away, please give all that away. We're not giving away like the little soccer balls. We're not giving away the posters and stuff. Give away hand sanitizer, please. This is all complicated and difficult, and it's just going to take some time to get used to. It's also going to take some time to see how it works out because, you get some positive news. I mean, it's every couple of hours. You get some positive news about, okay, we're learning this about the virus. Okay, we're figuring this out. Okay, this is something you don't have to worry about as much. Okay, this is something you still have to worry about. A couple hours later, it's like, there's a huge spike in this community, and why did that happen? And now shut everything down, and then there's like, well, wait a minute, no, we can do this over here because you have the test results here and you're doing things this way. We're all throwing our hands up and trying to figure it out. Even Dr. Fauci, like lately he's been all over the place on returning to sports. It's like, yeah, they can come back. Okay, they need to finish by a certain date, but they can come back. Then he said, well, I don't see football happening at all. Then he said he sees it in a bubble scenario. So it's like, and he's learning about it too. I'm not saying he's wrong. That's what this is everybody is learning as we go. So in that scenario, it's easy to be afraid of the unknown, but we've got to keep our heads and be smart and just be smart and take care of yourselves. You know?
And it's all about learning as you go, and the information changes and procedures change, and all of this, it's so fluid. You just have to understand that nothing is set in a straight line, and things are going to change. I mean, for the document that came out for the USL, it was 2 separate documents, and the return to play was what, 6 pages? The first document, that return to play agreement was 6 pages, and then protocols and everything else attached with possibilities of fans, travel, entering the stadium in different locations. I mean, that was 48 pages of laying everything out, and that's how much thought has to go into every single aspect of a match day. You're talking fans, you're talking security, you're talking game day personnel, you're talking concessions. The food has to be individually wrapped so you're not having any kind of shared germs. It's, you got travel, showing up at different times, going in through different gates. How does the bathroom look? Make sure that the urinals are removed so you have social distancing. All of these things were put in this 48-page document. That's the kind of thought that has to go into making sure that sports comes back in some form, whether fans are there or not. That's what the USL has put into their document. And to your point, yeah, when it comes to MLB, I don't even think they've gotten to that idea of 48-page document or anything like that. I think they are so far behind, it's not even funny.
I think the conversation is far behind in this country. We've been talking about it for a long time because we've been following what's gone on in Europe, which has been ahead of this. It broke out there first. I mean, It makes sense that they're ahead of this, but you should be learning some things from them, and you should be learning some things from the leagues that are back, and it feels like they're not. And where you had teams and leagues worried about financials a month ago, 2 months ago, here it's like only starting to catch up. You had teams and leagues worried about what these kinds of protocols look like. Now it's only starting to catch up, and it's not even catching up in some. I mean, the fact that the NCAA comes out and it's like, yeah, we've got our practice schedule sorted out. Yeah, we're making progress. Well, you got one conference that has any kind of a testing procedure.
Mm-hmm.
You're not making any progress. It's not about how often you're going to practice. It's not about adding practices to make up for losing spring football. It's about keeping these kids safe. That's what's important. It's about making sure that you're doing this so you don't have an outbreak and you damage the financials of a number of schools. And, by the way, and this is something that I've seen come up here in this country many times, well, if they don't deliver everything on the TV, like they're not going to have to give any money back. No, these people need these products. Like, they're not going to ask for money back.
Want to bet?
Have you seen any of this stuff? I mean, it's just like, really? The Premier League, which is one of the biggest worldwide properties in sports, every broadcaster wanted something back. Mm-hmm. Because they didn't even... And they are right now scheduled to get every game. But they didn't get them when they were scheduled. And they wanted money back. What about baseball? Baseball, oh, well, yeah, there's so much money. Yeah, it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. No worries. You're going to play 60 games or 70 games. You're going to lose over half of your season. How quick is it going to take for a national or local TV partner to come in, or local radio, because there's money there too, to come in and say, hey, we got half of what we paid for. What are you going to do about it?
Uh-huh.
Well, no, what are you going to do about it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you're not going to pay us. Okay, here's our lawyer's information, and you're going to talk to them about what you just said.
Yes.
That's going to happen. And this is where I get so frustrated on people not having protocol in college, especially college football. You get into a situation where big schools, okay, they might cancel a game with a small school. They were going to pay them $300,000 to come play. You cancel it, that smaller school's athletic department might not be able to function. That's one. Mm-hmm. You don't follow these protocols and you have recklessness like we're seeing school after school after school, and you have games that don't get played. You're going to have TV partners want money back. You're going to have sponsors want money back. You're going to affect the bottom line of a number of programs. That is a reality. Mm-hmm. That is absolutely a reality. And here, everybody is sticking their head in the sand about it and acting like it doesn't exist and it won't happen. Just wait until baseball finishes what they're going to do and they announce what their season's going to be. Just wait. You'll hear broadcast partners say, well, you're not playing all the games we paid for, so where's our money? Uh-huh. Or where's our extra year on the contract? Or whatever you're going to give us. Because you're not going to get away with it. You can't. Nope. There's just no way. So, I don't know, man. This is just... It feels like in this country in sports dealing with the coronavirus, we're like a month or two behind. And the conversations are a month or two behind. And that's one reason people freak out when they see player tested positive. Oh, shut everything down. Shut everything down. Or we see there's an outbreak in the community and shut everything down. You can't have a team practice. Well, no, those things have been proven that it's not necessarily the case if you're doing everything correctly. And yes, you can do this if you're doing everything correctly. If you're not, yeah. And even if you do everything correctly, you're still going to have repercussions of this. You're going to have financial repercussions. There's going to be challenges. There's just no way around any of that. That's the world we're in right now. And the more you understand that and the more you realize it and move forward with it, the more you can move forward. Otherwise, we're just going to be screaming into the void for another few months. I hope we have action. I think we will. I don't think there's any reason to say because we had 2 positive tests that there won't be MLS. I don't think there's any reason to say that because there was a positive test, there won't be NWSL. Will some players miss games due to coronavirus? Yeah, that's a very strong possibility. Will it affect some results? Could, depending on the players, absolutely. But that's the world we're in. That's the world we're in. Players have missed games due to the flu. Players have missed games due to a stomach virus. Players have missed games due to communicable illnesses before. It's not going to be the first time. But this is one you have to be scared. You have to be more worried about because of how quickly it can spread and what it can do. So this is where we're at. John, why don't you tell us about our good friend Steve Apolinski while we get... Actually, just tell us about Steve Apolinski first, then we'll get Mike Conti on the line.
Okay, well, Steve Apolinski and Associates. Apolinski and Associates, LLC. Ranked top 100 lawyers, legal firms in the state of Georgia by Georgia Trend Magazine. Legal elite for everything they've done over the last 30 years. Over $40 million in judgments for their clients in Georgia and Alabama. Wrongful death and serious injury. That's the case. A couple of different ways to get in touch with Steve. You can shoot him an email, steve at aa-legal.com. Give them a buzz, 404-377-9191. Get a free consultation, or you can go to aa-legal.com. And if you feel like talking to them right now, and you want to multitask, listen to the show, pop-up window at aa-legal.com. Live chat, 24/7, 365. So multitasking, if you've got questions. Steve Apolinski and Associates, proud supporters of everything soccer down here in SDH Networks. The website is aa-legal.com.
Nicely done.
Okay, so yesterday,
so that's good.
But okay, so to that point, yesterday, I'm fairly certain that if I had prepared text in front of me, I could rap. If you want me to freestyle, that is commonly referred to as a bad idea.
So now you're trying to find some confidence in this idea. That's where we're at with this, right?
I just think that if you don't want me freestyling, that's for damn sure.
No, nobody wants you freestyling. Mike Conti, can you freestyle rap?
Oh, God, no. Are you kidding? I can barely freestyle talk.
John was challenged to freestyle the Steve Apolinski read and rap to the music, and he was a little shaky on it, so I said, don't do it. You don't have the confidence.
I mean, so for someone like me who can't even dance because I have no concept of rhythm
right
or
there
timing,
with you, brother. The twos and the fours, I'm always searching.
Exactly. The idea of freestyle rapping is very, very foreign to me. I should probably learn how to dance before I can rap.
But I figure, Mike, if there's prepared text, it would be.
That's rapping. Not freestyle.
That's what I'm saying.
Freestyle.
Yeah.
He thinks he could rap.
I think I could do prepared text in time with the music. Ooh. Freestyle, no chance in hell.
Well, even the prepared text, man, oh man. I mean, you never know. You are a man of many and various talents, John, and we've learned your ability to come up with snappy rhymes, such as "action at the fraction."
Attaboy.
So I don't want to, totally discount the possibility that you could rap even with prepared text, but I'm having an awfully difficult time envisioning it.
404-377-9191. That's the number for Steve.
What are you doing with your hands?
Job done. I'm getting down. That's what I'm doing.
Oh, no.
Morning,
it's a good thing I'm on the phone and not on Twitch.
Yeah, I wish I wasn't right now. All right. Let's move on. So you freaking out, Mike? You freaking out like everybody?
No.
Yeah.
No, of course not. And look, here's the thing. A couple things. First of all, whoever tested positive, I think first and foremost, I'm deeply concerned about anyone that contracts the coronavirus. So for whoever the player is, first and foremost in my mind is that they get better and they have a very speedy recovery and that they're cared for in the best possible way, and I'm sure they will be. So I take that very, very seriously, and I hope whoever it is, he will be okay. Chances are he probably will be, but it's not a fun thing to get word that, hey, you've tested positive for coronavirus. So I hope whoever it is, it's okay. That said, guys, the protocol works. This is proof of it. You caught an asymptomatic positive. Proves the protocol works. If you don't have a robust testing protocol in place, whoever the asymptomatic positive was had the potential of prolonged contact and exposure with his teammates, and you could have had an outbreak. Here you were able to locate the asymptomatic positive, immediately put him in isolation. I don't know if they've had the second test yet to confirm if it was a false positive or not, but no one else tested positive. Everyone else is coming back to the training ground today. They're going to do a full team training. They'll be tested again. This is what the protocols are in place for. And I think we're going to get to a point really soon where the news of someone testing positive is not going to really be considered that earth-shattering. It is unrealistic, guys, to expect that we're going to eradicate the virus among MLS or NBA or NWSL. They had a positive, or any league or any professional sport. It is unrealistic to think that we're going to go weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks with no positives, especially with these players not currently in a bubble. So what you have to do is have a robust health and safety protocol in place to prevent outbreaks. The protocol has worked. That is good news. It's good news. I don't want to see anyone get sick. And like I said, I really hope whoever the player is, has as speedy a recovery as possible and that they remain asymptomatic. But I think what I'm most concerned about right now is, will it turn into an outbreak? And so far, there is no evidence that it has. You have seen instances in collegiate sports where positive tests have turned into outbreaks. But again, these are much more lax protocols than what MLS is dealing with right now.
Yeah.
Texas,
a lot of red flags. You've got to ask some questions about what's going on there.
Absolutely. But again, Texas, if I read everything correctly, it sounds like the University of Texas, they brought everyone back, but they only tested half the team on day one. and they tested the other half of the team a couple days later. Now you've had an outbreak. Well,
how are you thinking that's a good idea?
Fred the dog could probably tell you that's not a good idea. So you've got to ask serious questions about that. And like I said on Wednesday, the thing I don't like about what you've seen at Texas and Houston and SMU is the protocols are so lax, you're going to have outbreaks. And those outbreaks are going to serve as an indictment for the rest of the sports community that we aren't ready to be doing what we're doing yet. And that's just not true.
100%.
We've seen numerous examples of the protocols working and preventing outbreaks, and hopefully, in Atlanta United's case, it will be the same thing. Hopefully, it will be the same as it was in Dallas, where they had one positive test and that player is already back in training. Hopefully, it will be the same as it was with DC United, where you had one positive test and it did not turn into an outbreak. So now we'll see a test of the protocols here in Atlanta to see if it works. But if we hear today, we probably won't hear today because I've been told these PCR tests, the result does not come back instantly. It usually takes a day or two. But if we hear over the weekend a couple more players have tested positive, okay, that's why they have the testing infrastructure in place. That's what these protocols are for. That doesn't mean cancel Atlanta United. That doesn't mean the protocols aren't working. In fact, it proves the opposite, that the protocols aren't working, that they are working. And it doesn't mean that what they're doing is not safe. And I think you'll probably see today when we get the images released from training that outside of the player that tested positive, you probably had perfect attendance at training today. Because I think there is a general feeling that what is being done right now at the training ground meets the rigorous safety standards that are going to minimize the chance of someone getting sick.
And Mike, I think that the point can't be emphasized enough. Just because there is a positive test doesn't mean protocols aren't working and that you should shut everything down. Just because there's one, you've caught it, you address it, you move forward. It's not a reason to blow everything up.
Right. No, in fact, it proves the exact opposite, that the protocols are working. And the fact that you had one positive test and no one else would seem to prove, I mean, I don't know if it's absolute proof, but it would seem to prove that the player who tested positive didn't get sick because of an interaction at the training ground.
Right.
Otherwise, you would have more than one positive test, correct?
Yeah.
You would think so.
Yeah.
So, look, I mean, these players, they are still living at home. They are still interacting with other people outside of a work environment. We see photos of that, and they're allowed to do that. They have not been moved into a bubble environment yet. So the virus is not going to go away. You're going to have people testing positive. We've got to, and I think the reaction mostly has been reasonable. I don't think I've seen a whole lot of extreme overreaction to this, but I think we need to come to grips with the fact that it's not going to be possible to prevent an Atlanta United player or any other player in this league from going from now through December without being exposed to the coronavirus. It's just not going to be possible. The challenge is making sure that it does not become an outbreak. And so far, Atlanta United has succeeded in that goal.
So far, yeah. And I think, if you start to work backwards from what we know, if you have the test result come out yesterday late in the day, like you said, these tests are not the quick ones. They're the ones that take, I think, at least 24 hours. So you could guess that it maybe testing happened Wednesday. You were going to have testing today anyway. You're doing it for sure because there was a positive test. Everybody will be tested. You'll get those results. This is what happens. I mean, this is just where you are with this because most importantly, as you said, and I think this is what people have to understand, the bubble idea is a separate conversation than this. Because right now, people are at home. When you're at home, you are living a somewhat normal life. None of us, I think, are living a completely normal life right now. But, even if you are being very careful and only going to the store and stopping to put gas in the car and stuff like that, there's risk with that. There's things that you can't control in those environments. that's what these players are facing right now. In the bubble, you're not facing that. It's a different conversation altogether. And I think people have tried to combine them to say, like, oh, well, Atlanta had a positive, Miami had a positive, now you're all in trouble. Well, no, especially once you get to the bubble idea, because you're not having those interactions that bring risk in the same way.
No,
it's a different conversation entirely.
Right, and you're also finding out who those positive players are before you even get on the plane for Orlando.
Yeah, they're not going into the bubble.
Right. Now, in this case, this positive was detected more than 2 weeks out from Atlanta United going to Orlando. So this player should theoretically be able to go on time. But yeah, that's the whole point of why you're doing this robust testing at your training ground right now, because you're trying to set yourself up for when you enter the bubble, you aren't bringing a positive person into the bubble. So again, I mean, the protocols are working. These are the same protocols, and in some ways even more strict than what NASCAR has done for well more than a month now without having a problem, with what the PGA Tour is doing, and they have not had a problem, what boxing and UFC, IndyCar, all these other leagues and sanctioning bodies have done, where they have not had a problem. Where you are seeing outbreaks right now is, again, in collegiate sports, where the protocols are much more lenient, dangerously lenient.
They don't exist.
Yeah, dangerously lenient. And I'll go back to what I said on Wednesday. If you are an institution that cannot afford to be testing your student athletes on a regular basis, you should not have them working out.
Ding.
Period.
No.
If you can't afford to do it, then you can't afford to play sports, as far as I'm concerned. It sucks. It sucks for the student athletes, but you've got to keep your athletes safe. That's got to be first and foremost. I don't think anyone, even the most optimistic people among us, and I count myself as a very optimistic person when it comes to coronavirus, I don't think anyone thought that we were going to have this virus eradicated on June 1st. So if you don't have a robust testing structure in place, you're going to have outbreaks. And that's what we're having in the state of Texas right now. That doesn't mean, again, that does not mean that what Major League Soccer is doing is not safe. Major League Soccer is probably 10 times safer than what the University of Texas and SMU and Houston have been doing, because they're testing every other day. Now, I mean, if you want to ask the question about you test someone but you don't get the result for a day, is it really safe to have, people together when you don't know the outcome of the test yet? I think that's a fair question. I don't know what the workaround is to that.
Yeah.
I don't know if a test truly exists right now where you can swab someone, put it in a machine, and get a green light or a red light instantly. That does concern me. I do wonder about, okay, if they were tested going on to the training ground Wednesday and this player tested positive, but he didn't know it yet, and interacted with his teammates all day Wednesday, what could that potentially mean for the rest of the team? I don't know. I think
here's something on that, though, and I think this is the other important thing. And we've talked about it in like kind of broad strokes, but I think the details really important here. With the Bundesliga back, sports performance specialists in Motio and the Dutch Soccer Association, they started assessing player tracking data from every match in their top flight in 2 years. So this isn't a match scenario. Training's different. But remember, you have a bunch of protocols to training about not having players in the same space for extended periods of time, hanging around each other. They're sitting separately. There's a bunch of protocols in place there. But in a match situation, just 0.2% of 482 top flight matches in the Netherlands saw 2 players exposed to close contact for more than 30 seconds. Close contact is within 1 meter, 3 feet. And when you get down to the next level of data, and this is the important thing for me, 50 to 80% of those close encounters are players convening for the results of referee decisions or arguing with referees or other game interruptions. If you take a corner quicker, 45% reduction. If goal celebrations are shorter, 35% reduction. All of those things the game doesn't have the high-risk scenarios that most health organizations are worried about. You're not like you're sitting in an office for an 8-hour shift with the potential for the virus to get into the air conditioning system. You're not sitting at a restaurant for a full meal for 30 minutes to an hour with people around you who things can get into the air. That's not how this works. So that's why I think, even take it over to basketball, that's why you didn't see a spread in the Utah Jazz with Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell testing positive. That's why you haven't seen these wide outbreaks in teams who are following protocols. You got a question about Rostov in Russia right now because they had 6, and that's more than we've seen with any team. And
there was wasn't there a second division German team?
Oh,
that
Dynamo Dresden.
But now that was different because that was not due to protocol. That was not due to the league decision. That was the local health organization, and most people in Germany felt like they kind of overstepped their bounds on requiring the team to go into a quarantine because it was 3 players. It was 3 players at the beginning of returning to training that had this. Now, one thing that caught them up a little bit is Germany started training and came back to play games in like a week and a half. Like they came back fast from the full team training to games. Here, that's not the case. Atlanta United's going to have like 5 weeks from the start of team training to games. So
and to expand upon your point, Jason, I went back and carefully read and examined the current MLS protocol. And I think this is important to point out too. There is a protocol right now for full team training, and then there's an entirely different protocol for when teams go down to Orlando and they're in the bubble. But in these full team training environments, the dressing rooms are open, but they're encouraging teams to use multiple dressing rooms. So players are spread out 10 feet or more within the dressing room. Because again, I mean, all of your points are salient about the close contact that you have within a match, but what about in the team room? What about in the dressing room? What about in the shower and all of that? But the thing is, there are MLS protocols in place even for that right now. One of the protocols, I know it sounds like a small thing, all doors are to remain open within the team facility. So no one touches a doorknob.
Yep.
That's how detailed these protocols are. So, yeah, again, there is no way you're ever going to minimize or eliminate, there's no way you're ever going to eliminate the possibility of something like this happening, but you can greatly reduce that possibility, and that's what these protocols are in place for. And I'll go back to what I said again. If it was only one player out of a couple dozen people at the training ground, that tells me again that player did not get infected at the training ground if it's only one. It can't be. You would have to have multiple positive tests to indicate at least the possibility of that happening. So in all likelihood, this was a player who was infected somewhere else and then came to the training ground. It goes back to what Jason said. If you've gone grocery shopping, or if you've put gas in your car, or if you're like me and you're an essential worker and you've gone to the office, you're going to have instances where you're going to have potential contact with people who have COVID-19. There's no way you can eliminate that possibility unless you put yourself in a bubble, which, again, by the way, is something the league is doing once they restart play. So I'm not worried about it at all. Again, I think it's proof that the protocol works. But, again, first and foremost, I hope whoever it is that they're dealing with it in a good way, and that they remain asymptomatic.
That's key,
right? And that's very important. But even if they're asymptomatic, I mean, if I was asymptomatic and I was told I had COVID-19, I'd probably be very, very frightened. And I hope from a mental health standpoint that the affected player is in a good place right now. It's got to be hard to be in isolation now for 2 weeks and be away from your support system. And maybe it's not even 2 weeks.
Yeah, I don't think it's 2 weeks now. It's 2 negative tests and like 7. Yeah. It may be 7 days, but maybe it's just 2 negative tests.
No, I looked at the program. There's no set number.
That's what I thought.
It's 2 negative tests, and you have to be cleared by a league doctor, and a team doctor.
Right. Okay.
So in the case of the Dallas player, I think they were back well before the 2 weeks were up.
Yeah, about a week, I think.
Yeah. So, but either way, I mean, we have an Atlanta United player who's sitting at home alone right now. Just found out he tested positive for COVID. I worry about that player.
Yeah.
Because that would not be a fun thing to hear. Even though I'm confident he will get better and will be well cared for, it's a scary thing. And I think I don't think there's been a lot of bickering over, what to do with sports and what to do with soccer because of this. But I hope everyone who's discussing it will keep in the front of their mind that, there's a player that needs our support right now. We need to be very, very positive for that player.
No doubt about it. Also, Mike, this morning, news coming out of the USL, the championship and the Players Association announced they've got the formal agreement on a return to play for the 2020 season. And they're still looking at that June 11 restart for the season in whatever form it's going to be, and resume negotiations for the historic first CBA in the coming weeks.
Yeah, and what's interesting is it looks like USL is going to be the first team sports league in this country to be back in home stadiums. I don't know if they'll be with fans. I think that might be possible in some markets, but I don't know if decisions have been made on that.
Some are pushing forward with it.
Yeah, I think you have to. I mean, they're very, very reliant on match day revenue. I think another thing that we have found, guys, and look, I watch this COVID stuff really, really closely because it has a direct impact on, how soon we can get live sports back and how soon we can resume our jobs, which is obviously very important to the three of us.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing that I've seen come up a lot in this spike that they're having in Texas and Florida, Arizona, and California, there seems to be a lot of correlation between those spikes and people going back into air-conditioned environments. And I think that's interesting because there seems to be some evidence that the risk of exposure is lessened when you are outdoors.
So the reconstituted air.
Right. The recirculated air. Like when you are indoors in recirculated air, you would have a higher risk of being infected if you're exposed as opposed to being outside, particularly in warm weather, but where the air is not recirculated. And I don't know if there's been like an official declaration on that, but that's some of what I've been reading lately.
There's been different studies on it, even going way back early on. I think some of the Chinese or Korean studies on it talked about air conditioning and the particles getting into the air and then getting into the air conditioning and then being spread. So, I mean, logically, I can see that. That makes sense.
Yeah. Right.
If you're outside, it's just going to go away.
So if that's the case, then why couldn't you have reduced capacity at some USL stadiums? Mm-hmm. Especially in locations where health officials are going to allow it. It would seem doable to me, but I don't know. I think you're going to see in USL Championship, you're probably going to see a very much regional schedule. I'm sure they're going to try to reduce the amount of flights or eliminate flights if at all possible. You're probably going to have a lot of bus trips. But USL they're going to be back in stadiums before Major League Baseball even throws a pitch. They're going to be back in stadiums before MLS. They're obviously well before NBA and NHL. So kudos to USL. That's a big, big accomplishment. I had grave concerns about whether or not the USL would be able to have a championship season and a League One season this year, and they're going to. And that is absolutely huge.
League One's still got some work to do, but championships, we're definitely on the road.
It sounds like League One is in good shape, like that there's going to be a real honest effort to play.
Yeah, definitely that.
So, I mean, it's good. It's good for soccer in this country. And I hope that they have strict health and safety protocols as well. I hope that they work as well as they have worked in other places, and we can keep going and play out however long a season they want to play.
What do you think about baseball? Are they going to play? Mike? Oh, did we lose Mike? I think we lost Mike.
Well, I mean,
Baseball ran him off like it's running everybody off right now. Man, they're not going to be able to start baseball down here anymore.
You mentioned Rob Manfred, and then all of a sudden
I didn't mention him by name. I just said baseball.
But no, just
it's that bad.
That baseball.
How about now, guys?
Yeah, there he is. I mentioned baseball and you ran away. I was scared.
Yeah, that was weird. I face-dialed the mute button. I don't know how I did that. Yes, absolutely. I think baseball will play. I think it'll be a month from today. I think you're seeing some last-minute posturing and screaming. I bet the deal gets done this weekend. I really, really do.
Here's my concern about baseball, and I don't know where they are on this kind of stuff. All the safety protocols, all the stuff we've talked about, that is not easy. I mean, there's a lot of things, and with baseball, there's an added component because you will have travel, you will have games in home markets. Do they have a plan ready to go? I mean, are they just arguing about money and they've got everything else ready to go and they sign off and boom, here we go? Or do they still have to figure out what travel looks like? Are they going to bus?
No, they have that figured out, but it has not been agreed to.
Oh boy, that scares me.
Well, but nothing's been agreed to. So,
yeah, but if they're going to argue about everything, I think there's going to be arguments because just like you mentioned with USL, and that's part of the protocol is a 500-mile trip or less, you have to bus.
Yeah,
no option to fly. Baseball's a little different because you could charter, and charter flights are a whole different conversation as we've had. But how's it going to look? How are the hotel stays going to look? What are the mandates going to be? I think that's going to create some more complications that I don't know if they've talked about yet.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I have heard is that there's been some pushback about being sequestered in hotels when you're on the road, that the players are not thrilled with the idea that, in fact, one of the proposals was the players wouldn't even be allowed to shower at the ballpark. Right. That they would have to go from the ballpark back to their hotel in their uniforms. They would only be allowed to have meals in the hotel. They couldn't go out or anything. Kind of like the MLS and NBA bubble, but just in remote locations. And I know there was some pushback on that. But I have a feeling that the health and safety stuff is probably not going to take nearly as long to resolve as the revenue split thing that's come up now. I will predict that we'll have baseball in mid-July, and I predict that today's June 19th. I predict within 2 months the Braves will be playing a home game with fans. I really believe that. I really believe the Braves before Labor Day, maybe even by August 1st, will be playing a home game and there will be some fans. I really strongly believe that.
I will go against you on the first part, but with you on the second, because I do think that when the Braves come back, because I think it'll take a little bit longer. I don't think they're going to get 60 or 70 games in the longer this goes. Yeah. But I do think that the Braves and other teams will have some fans in the building because it's trending that way. And I wonder how they look at it. Something we talked about earlier this week, the company that's doing the testing in England with the Premier League, they are doing a pilot program of a health passport on your phone, and that's been talked about in other countries as well as a way to, not take it a step beyond just the temperature check and questionnaire type of idea about coming into the building, but actually showing that you've had a negative COVID-19 test in whatever your recommended time is, if it's in the last couple of days or something. I wonder if you're ever going to get to that here. I don't think so, but I wonder what protocols they put to keep it safe for fans.
Yeah, I think the question is, do you get a vaccine before you get to that point of health passports? I don't think we
here. I don't think.
Yeah, I don't think we are close enough in this country to having, a federally issued home COVID-19 testing kit. Where you would swab yourself every day before you left the house. I don't think we're anywhere close to that. I think we're closer to a vaccine. If we ever got to that point where you did have home testing and it was linked to some kind of, health passport, then I think that's a total game changer that really opens up a lot of doors. But that feels like it's very expensive and very time consuming. I don't know if we'll ever get to that point. I think, again, you're going to have 5,000 fans at Talladega this weekend for NASCAR. You're going to have 30,000 fans up at Bristol for NASCAR in a couple weeks. IndyCar just announced today they're going to have fans at Iowa in a couple weeks. PGA Tour, they're going to have fans in a couple weeks at Ohio and going from there. So even with these spikes, and they really are confined to 4 states, Arizona, Texas, Florida, and California, even with the spikes there, I think you're still in a position where there is a general degree of comfort about having some fans in socially distant situations. And I really think, we talked about it with USL. I really, really think when MLS gets back into home markets, and I say this even with the picture having deteriorated in the last week, I still really believe you're going to have some fans in some MLS stadiums once play resumes in home markets, hopefully by the end of August. And I think that's probably the date they're targeting. Because, again, if the NFL is playing in front of fans, there's no reason why Major League Soccer should not be allowed to.
Yeah, hopefully we get a TV schedule here soon, too.
Yeah, don't get me started on that. That's that really bothers me. But it's just I don't know what to say. Like, you would think before making an announcement about having certain TV partners tied into this tournament that they would have a general agreement on who pays for production costs. Mm-hmm. That's a bad look for the league. I'm sorry. I'll say it. That is a bad look for the league. Don't announce anything about television if you don't have that worked out yet. Not a fan of that. And it puts us in a great degree of limbo because, they're yelling at me here at the radio station about when these games are going to be played because they have to, we have to schedule things. We have to schedule commercials and things like that. And I don't know what to tell them. So it's I know there are a lot of moving parts to this tournament, and it's good that we're going to get played back and a lot of people working hard on it. But that was not a good look for the league, in my opinion.
Yeah, Daniel Price is in this morning. He disagrees with us. He says he doesn't think baseball is going to come back. Both sides are asking for too much. I think it's just a huge argument. Both sides are in the right and wrong.
Right.
Something's got to give. Not everyone's going to be happy.
I think they're really, really, really close. I mean, now it's they're going to get the owners are saying 60 games. The players are saying 70. It will be easy to get that to 65. That's a big piece. Now you got to figure out the revenue share on the postseason. If that's what they're down to, they can get that done. I really think.
I think if they don't, it's not necessarily because of this negotiation. It's because of the CBA that ends after next season because it's all posturing to get ready for that.
Yeah.
And that would be the problem that would hold it up more than anything is people don't want to give too much because they're worried about setting a precedent because of the CBA.
Yeah, but I think all precedents go out the window in a year like this.
I would hope so. It should. I think the people who are thinking about sports intelligently are doing that. And hopefully that happens because baseball coming back is an important thing. And they shouldn't be having this problem that they're having right now. It's ridiculous.
No doubt about
it. Before Mike goes, Jason, can you hit breaking news sounder, please?
I can hit breaking news sounder. I don't know what it is. I'm curious. Here we go.
Quoting Paul Tenorio, Leandro Gonzalez Perez wasn't away from Major League Soccer for long. The former Atlanta United center back is returning to MLS after just 6 months with Tijuana in Liga MX. Expansion side Inter Miami has agreed to a transfer for LGP and will finalize the deal in the coming days, according to multiple sources with knowledge of the deal. It will not be official until a transfer window is opened ahead of the MLS's back tournament in July.
One thing before we react to that, because it's an Atlanta United player, Tijuana, you have to understand a couple of things. We talked about it financially. What's that?
They're hurting financially.
Well, they've always been hurting financially, but now you've got ownership sales happening, and now they're talking about moving 9 players from Querétaro over to Tijuana, and Atlante's moving players to Querétaro, and they're talking about pushing out the coach who brought Leandro Gonzalez Perez in, and it's total makeover. So what he walked into in January is not the situation now, and it's not just because of coronavirus, it's because of ownership changes and all kinds of complications in Mexico that he might have been pushed out. And where's your safest landing spot? Back in the league. And there's not a landing spot in Atlanta because Fernando Meza replaced him.
No, I was just going to say that. I'll ride or die with Fernando Meza and Miles Robinson any day as my center back pairing.
I love LGP. I love LGP and what he brings to the game. But
no. Love him. But Meza is LGP without the rash challenges.
Meza's a young Parkhurst to me. He's different. Robinson has become the LGP of the duo. If you're going to go back to the day one combo where it was Parkhurst and LGP, now it's Meza and Robinson. They've replaced that kind of duo.
That said, great signing Inter Miami.
Yeah,
good job, Paul McDonough. I mean, LGP, I think, could be a best 11 defender in this league if he doesn't get ejected from too many matches. So that's a good signing for Inter Miami. But I'm very, very happy with where we are in Atlanta. I'm not gonna rue seeing LGP go to another team because I really like Fernando Meza a great deal.
Yeah, there's just nothing. I mean, it's just the way it's worked out. I mean, Tijuana, the ownership stuff, the situation with multiple clubs and players moving in chunks and managers leaving after 6 months, and there's nothing that could have been done to prevent it. What the scenario was when he transferred to Tijuana is not the scenario now in Tijuana. And he's got to do what's right for his career. And look, there's nowhere here. Meza's there now. So both clubs move on and everybody figures it out. And that's a good spot for him. He's going to play every day. He's going to be in a team that has a lot of ambition. So it's all worked out for the best across the board, I think.
Is the transfer window going to open before the tournament starts?
Reportedly, it's going to be a two-day window to where these kind of deals can get done. And then the transfer window in full will open after the tournament. And I'm thinking they might try to mirror what UEFA's doing with the window being open in September and closing October 5th.
But if they can get him in before the tournament, it is possible Leandro Gonzalez Perez's first match in MLS will be against Orlando City.
He likes playing those guys.
Yeah, we all do.
Yeah, and Jurgen Lacadia's loan has been extended until June 30th of 2021.
Good. I'll leave him on my board. I'm working on Cincinnati today, so that's good.
So they got another year of Lacadia. Probably Brighton got some money out of that, some additional money, and they probably needed some additional money. These moves, you've got to look at the financial components because you're going to see moves over the next 2 years that are going to be on paper like, whoa, what? But the financials are all different now. Tijuana, Miami, everything is going to be different. Prices are going to change. It's all crazy. So buckle up. Buckle up.
Buckle up, Buttercup.
No, just buckle up.
So, yeah, those are the only two pieces of breaking news that I had to end the segment with Mike.
Thank you, Mike. Have a good weekend.
Guys.
What are you cooking today on the grill?
What's in the grill?
Doing something unusual today, grilling some peaches to go with a salad.
Good call.
So we'll see how that turns out. It's peach season. The local peaches right now are really, really good. I don't know if you've had them yet. They're really, really good. So we'll grill some of those today.
That's a really good call. I might have to think about this one and try to see what I can do with grilling some peaches.
I'll share the recipe. I mean, it's good. It goes in a salad with bacon and Vidalia onions. It's pretty good.
Oh, that sounds really good. Okay, yeah. Please send the recipe.
Will do. Have a good weekend, guys.
You too. Thanks, Mike.
See ya.
All right. So, looks like LGP is headed to Miami. I want to get this Tijuana situation fully explained because it's complicated. It's very complicated, and Mexican football can be very complicated in general. This is even weird for that. Let's see.
Break it down.
Okay. Nestor Esquivel, about a day ago, about 23 hours ago on Fansided, he covers the Liga MX. Xolos on Wednesday announced 10 signings. 10. 10. It's just crazy. So a good number of these players were from Querétaro. Querétaro was bought by the same owner who owns Atlante in the Ascenso, in the second division. The management of Atlante has taken over in Querétaro. So now Querétaro, which there's been speculation about them moving, period. Atlante originally was based in Mexico City. They moved to Cancun a while ago, a pretty good while ago. But there is rumor, 2007 is when they moved, but there's rumors that what will happen here is ultimately Querétaro will be gutted. They will go back to Mexico City as Atlante to go back to Atlante's roots. And then I guess Querétaro would take over the second division spot that Atlante is in, and that's how it would go down. So you've got craziness. And what Tijuana's brought in has been not just random guys from Querétaro. Marcel Ruiz, who started 10 games in the Clausura, scored a couple of goals, averaged 1.4 interceptions per game. Ghanaian Clifford Abogoye. He is a forward who can track back. Jose Enrique Angulo, who played in Serie A. You've got a lot of players coming in, which means a lot of players are going to move out. So Tijuana is in that weird situation. We talked about it when LGP went there, that they have struggled since Miguel Herrera went back to Club America. They've struggled to have the success that he had there. And it's been big move after big move after big move. Then they run out of money. Greg Garza's loan here to Atlanta and then subsequent full transfer reportedly had a lot to do with financial situations in Tijuana. You've had players not get paid, but you also have owners go crazy and bring in 10 players. So it's this constant back and forth and craziness. But because of what happened with Querétaro and Atlante, Tijuana took advantage and brought a bunch of players in, which means they have to move some players out. So Leandro Gonzalez Perez is moving out. Looks like he's going to Miami. Miami's probably getting a sweetheart deal here because they're probably not having to spend very much. They're probably spending less to get him from Tijuana than if they had tried to get him from Atlanta back in January. So that's smart for Miami. It's smart for LGP if he's at a club that has no continuity, is all over the place, which we worried about for him going there to begin with, and this is where you are. It's smart from Miami. It's a player that Paul McDonough obviously knows. It's a player that Paul McDonough was involved in bringing into the league, and you take advantage of an opportunity and you do it. And for Miami, when you look at what, how they're built, this is the type of position that they needed desperately. And as we saw with LGP here in Atlanta, expansion teams need these kinds of big figures. You've got center back wide open. You've got Roman Torres as a veteran, but you wonder how much he's got left in the tank. You've got Dylan Nealis, who's a rookie. You've got Grant Lillard, who has never really lived up to his promise previously in Chicago. You've got Christian Macoun, who a lot of people are saying is better in the holding midfield. You've got Andres Reyes and Nicolas Figal. I think LGP steps in and he starts day one for Miami, and that's what they need. And if you pair him up with one of the younger guys, or you could pair him up with Roman Torres, and LGP and Torres would be one of the more experienced, more physical center back pairings you could find in the league. And then, by the way, LGP is a player that Diego Alonso knows from last year in CONCACAF with Monterrey. So it's a player that is a known quantity coming into a team. They probably got a great deal, and for him to get out of Tijuana and get into a better situation, Miami is a better situation than Tijuana. It works out for him. Everybody wins in the deal. Atlanta gets a different kind of player to move forward with, but you can't look at all of it linked because the world has changed a little bit since this. The decisions that were made in January by LGP's representation, wanting a longer-term contract and wanting a move because the numbers were right, that doesn't mean that Atlanta could see what was going to come. You know, there's no way to know that. Like, that happened in January. Now this has happened because of a lot of different things. This is where you're at. This is the game. You have to be ready to deal with situations that come up. This is good business for Miami. And they're going to be in a good position with this signing. It's a good signing, and we'll see how he fits with that group.
Couple of questions from Tafka in regard to this. Tafka wants to know if Atlanta United got a rights fee for him.
I don't know why you would. No idea why you would, because you sold him. You got money for him, or however the paperwork worked out of the Mesa deal. You made a move. So there's no rights fee. There's nothing. There wouldn't be anything. And he's not a younger player that you would have a sell-on clause on typically. Could there be one? Maybe. If there is, it's small. It would be minimal because of his age.
And this was a thought that both Tafka and Jarrett had. Tafka says that would have required the top allocation spot, correct?
It should have. The allocation spot's a weird thing to begin with. And I don't know if that list had actually been updated publicly. It should have, because the allocation order is for players who would be returning to the league who have been transferred out, or national team players who haven't played in the league. So it's a list of specific players that have to be acquired in a specific way, and there's an order to it. And I believe Miami had the top spot after some maneuvering that had happened. I'm going to try to confirm that really fast, so hang tight. Looks like it was last updated, June 17th, probably for a good reason. Miami was number one on that list, and yes, he was on the list because it was updated. So, it would go through that.
And then Tafka says, hey, it's easier to get him back later if he's already in the league, with a shrug shoulders emoji, and he says it's going to hurt to see him in different colors.
Yeah, but you can't think about, like, oh, he played here before, so you have to have him back. That's just, this is the game. One other thing about the allocation list, and something that we had never seen, how much you got for Leandro Gonzalez-Perez and a transfer fee. To be on this list, and he's on it, players transferred outside of MLS garnering a transfer fee of at least $500,000. So you know that there was a significant transfer fee for him from Tijuana. Could you have a player valuation as part of that? Maybe. I don't know. I don't know the paperwork side of that and how you managed it in terms of cap and money and TAM and GAM and et cetera, et cetera. But it was a transfer fee of over $500,000. That's why he's on the list. And Miami is using their top spot to get him. That means Cincinnati will be in the top spot going forward.
Shiva says, someone will sign Tito in MLS, and that'll break my heart. Too many of my favorite players playing for other MLS teams.
Yeah, but I mean, that's how this goes. I think what Atlanta fans are getting to now is this is the world of soccer. This is what happens. You don't see players spend their whole career with a club. It's very rare. It can happen. It's not frequent anymore, and a lot of times they'll move from into other teams in the league, and that means you're going to be competing against them, and that's just part of the drill. It's just something that happens. It doesn't mean you don't love what they did for your club. It doesn't mean that you hate them and root against them in a significant way when they're on another team. But look, LGP's the kind of player that he doesn't care. he'll do what LGP does. He will hack somebody down. He'll yell at the referee about it. He will do that in a Miami shirt. So you might not like him very much after he does that to somebody, and he doesn't care. He's that player, and that's okay. That's a good thing. I respect everything he brought to the table. He's going to be a big addition for Miami, and just looking at it from an Eastern Conference perspective, he's going to make Miami better. That's going to be a team that Atlanta has to worry about a little bit more now, because they've got a player who is absolute best 11, top 5 center back in the league, and they've got him in their squad now. That upgrades their defense.
A lot of folks are going back and forth and talking amongst themselves about LGP. Chris Hutchison, though, with the discussion that we finished with Mike about what's going on in the egg, Chris says if you make your own salsa, grilling the tomatoes first is the way to go, apparently.
Oh, okay. I have not done that in a while. So
I have not either.
Yeah, I need to get into that. Couple other things about Tijuana quickly. So, new manager, the Gustavo Quinteros, who brought LGP in, he was sacked a few days ago. They've brought in all the players we talked about. I was looking to see if there was any more detail here on the Tijuana side. He told The Athletic in March that he was living in San Diego. He was crossing the border for training and for matches. So you shouldn't have any major issues in terms of visas or anything. He should be completely fine. I think that's it. There's not much in the Athletic article about the Tijuana side of it. He would be more than likely not a designated player. He would be in that, TAM idea, and all that's different. Once we get closer to the MLS's back tournament, we'll do a refresh on the CBA changes and these kinds of things once we find out when that transfer window will open. So we'll have a little bit better picture of what teams can do. But he's going to make Miami better, and now you've had a couple moves. So LGP is the allocation order move. Cincinnati's number one. LAFC, they actually, I think, were they first? Yeah, they were first. They were in the allocation order due to trades, but they signed Andy Nahar, and that was one that required an allocation order move. So it's almost like we've been slipping on these kinds of moves and the announcements of these kinds of moves because there's a lot of other things to talk about, but that allocation order has moved a good bit here lately. It could move more. I don't know if Cincinnati has a move lined up. Keeping Locadia was probably their biggest piece of business. So, could they trade a spot there? Yeah, they could. Because if you're looking at bringing a player in who's on that list, and I'll pull it back up so we can talk about what that list looks like at the moment. Because one player, I want to see if he's on here. He's not. Eric Lehigh, who is out of contract, he is not on the list. So you don't have to worry about that if you're interested in outside back depth. Another player who's on the list that we didn't get a full update on how much the transfer fee was Carlos Carmona. He would have been transferred for more than $500,000 because he's on the list. Let's see. Players who could be potentially in play for MLS teams. Fabian Castillo, because he's also at Tijuana. He would be one that's been linked with MLS moves before. Originally at Dallas, forced a move to Turkey, and he's bounced around it. It did not work out for him to force a move out of Dallas. Keep an eye on Castillo. He could be one that could be in play for an MLS team. Let's see. There's always been talk about Sebastian Giovinco coming back, and he is on this list. I don't think he'd go anywhere other than Toronto. Due to Fabian Johnson would be on the list, and that would be the Cincinnati possibility because he's been linked with moves in the past. They went after him before. Don't know if they have the means to get him now, but they'd have to use that number one spot. And if they don't to get him, whoever would want him would have to trade for that number one spot. So in terms of Fabian Johnson, Cincinnati holds the cards now. Kyle Larin is a player we've talked about in a weird transfer situation. He is under contract to Besiktas. He's on the list. Who else could potentially be in play for MLS? Tim Ream's name has come up multiple times, not in a while. At Fulham, I don't think anything dramatic is going to change with their situation, but they are a smaller club that might need money. And I don't know what his long-term contract situation is. If somebody comes in with a transfer offer, well, Tim Ream could be in play. Another Tijuana player, two more Tijuana players, actually. Camilo, who was at Vancouver previously. I think Camilo went to Querétaro first. He's on the books at Tijuana now. Goal scorer. He's a player who could absolutely be in the mix here. and Eric Torres, Kubo Torres. He is at Tijuana. He's had success in MLS before. If you need a forward, he's another one who could be in the mix due to the changes in Tijuana. I think those are the main ones that would be potentially in play. I don't see Yoshi Yotun being in play out of Cruz Azul. I think he's pretty well established there. So keep an eye on the allocation order. Cincinnati holds the cards now, and after them, it's Cincinnati, it's Vancouver, it's Orlando. Fabian Castillo and Orlando, because of Oscar Pareja, is something to keep an eye on. Sporting Kansas City, Columbus, Houston. That's what the allocation order looks like.
For the record, Tim Ream has another year on his current deal at Fulham.
Well, if you're going to move him, now would be the time to move him because he's got one more year. Fulham would get something for him. If they're not going to move him, then he's going to be out of contract in a year, and that's a different conversation.
Chris Hutchison, when you see our former players resurfacing at other MLS clubs, it is a testament to the front office of Atlanta United.
You have to be ready to move. You have to be ready to be nimble. I mean, we'll go back to that conversation with LGP. According to what was said on both sides, he was not trying to force a move. He didn't go into the offseason wanting to move. He was very complimentary of Atlanta United and Frank de Boer and MLS as a league on Argentine television. And then there was an offer made. And he had said via his agent, you would assume that he had to say in this, that if there was an opportunity for him to make more money, that they would want to hear it. Well, I would assume that came, and they wanted to hear it, and they did hear it, and they got the deal done. And what Atlanta did in getting the deal done is they lined up the replacement simultaneously. And again, we don't know exactly the particulars of how all that went down, but you can guess that Atlanta United structured everything and announced everything at the same time, one after the other, the way they did, for every benefit you can get with the salary cap and with the financials. You get Meza, who I think is the perfect fit. Fernando Meza, we've only seen a handful of games, and it's been a while, but Fernando Meza blew me away in those games. I think he was the perfect kind of player for what Frank de Boer wants and what this team needed. So they handled it. They handled the business really well. And for him, for LGP, he got more money, and he got to a Copa MX final, and he's not going to get to play in that final, which stinks for the club and stinks for him. But the world's changed, and especially in Liga MX, the world has changed. And I think you have to understand, it's very easy to toss off things about Liga MX right now. This is not even a typical Liga MX situation with, they're struggling financially. This is more complicated because they just brought in 10 players, and they fired the manager who brought in LGP. So new manager, 10 new players because of a situation with Querétaro. Everything's changing. So that's just the reality of it. The world has changed for them, and LGP gets caught in the shuffle. And again, his representation made a good move for their client. That's good business, because you have to make the change when things change. Okay, I might not play as much here. I might be asked to restructure my deal because you just brought in 10 new players. Okay, it's time to explore. Who do we know? We know Paul McDonough. We know they need a center back. Boom. And this is how it goes down.
Also, Daniel says he can just picture LGP cutting Barco down with a smile on his face and laughing.
He probably would. And Barco would probably get up and shove him and then laugh because he knows him. They all know how this is going to go. I mean, this happens all the time. You look at where these guys are coming from in Argentina. You look at how players move in that league. It's typical. Like a guy will be a teammate, he'll bounce over to another team, and it could turn into a cutthroat match with a lot of bad feelings, and then afterwards you're hugging it out because you know these guys. But yeah, in the match, the passion's going to be there, and you have to manage that. You know that he can get riled up, and you want to rile him up because you want him to get red carded to help your team, but you also have to manage your emotions because you know he likes to rile players up. So you have to play against him now. But Atlanta players know him better than anybody else, so they shouldn't get bothered by that as much. We'll see. We'll see how this goes. It's going to be fascinating. It's going to be fun.
We are caught up on Twitter. Where would you like to go now that we're in stoppage time?
We'll see what other news breaks for a minute, but we'll catch up on some other stuff we've mentioned. Eric Wynalda fired from Las Vegas Lights on Wednesday. Brett Lashbrook told the Las Vegas Review-Journal, quote, violation of club rules, league rules, and protocol, and that's with the Players Association. Declined to specify what rule was broken after initially not providing an explanation for the firing. Wynalda didn't return phone calls seeking comment from the Las Vegas Review-Journal. He said during an interview with Review-Journal columnist Ed Graney on his ESPN radio show that he didn't know the exact cause of his firing, but he accepted culpability if his team violated protocols. This is the quote from Wynalda. In all probability, something did happen, and that's where the axe fell, on me. I'm sure it's something where I'll get an explanation as to what exactly happened or what rules were violated. I take responsibility for it. Lashbrook said it had nothing to do with the financials. He said that Wynalda was being paid his original salary, had accepted a blended pay cut that would equate to a 15% decrease over the entire season. He would have been paid his full salary starting in the offseason. Now we get a little more clarification that some rule was broken. There was a lot of conversation in Vegas about a waiver as they were negotiating these protocols for USL to train because of the facility they were using and a lot of back and forth. It seems like that's where we're pointing to, is some kind of breach of rules, and that's it. So that's where we're at with that. Wynalda said originally that he was expecting to go to Germany and get a coaching gig in the next 3 to 6 weeks. We'll see what opportunities present themselves. UEFA, they have approved temporary changes to financial fair play and club licensing because they go together. The break-even assessment of club finances, it's been postponed for 2020, looked at alongside of 21, which makes more sense. You're basically combining the two. So you've got flexibility to do what you need to do in the transfer market if you have the money to do it, salary obligations, and also account for unexpected losses of revenue, like not having fans and not playing games. So everything's been adjusted, and I think there's even more potential to adjust further for coronavirus losses. They don't want those losses to tweak the numbers for a financial fair play situation, which is fair. That's the right way to do it. Marco Asensio for Real Madrid, I don't know if you guys saw this yesterday, 30 seconds into his return from being out for a year, scores on a volley. That's pretty awesome. I was excited to see that. England, you've got the government now being urged to block the Newcastle United takeover. Angus McNeil is the chair of the International Trade Select Committee. He's written to Liz Truss, who is the trade secretary, to voice concerns. McNeil said, "This is an insult to the UK government, affront to the Premier League, and abuse of UK sport, and should not be tolerated." And it's all about the pirating of Premier League broadcasts. Quite simply, if Saudi Arabia is unwilling to play by the rules of international law, then it should have no role in the future of UK sport. You still have the other offer that, according to most numbers, was more lucrative to begin with. That's still sitting over here on the table and just waiting. So we'll see. We will see how that goes down. Ryan Fraser mentioned that he was not going to sign a short-term extension for Bournemouth and that he would be eligible to play in the next 2 games. Eddie Howe says, nah, not so much. Played his last game for the football club, according to Eddie Howe. Says that if you can't count on him for the whole fight to stay up, can't count on him for 2 games. We'll see. 2 games is 2 games. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, if his head's not in it, if his heart's not in it, then that's a different conversation. But if he was willing to play the 2 games and would help you, you probably should have taken it.
And he's looking for a move to Everton, I think, is the team that's being mentioned.
Championship promotion playoffs are set. First leg, July 26 and 27. Second legs, July 29 and 30. Final, August 4th at Wembley. The League Cup next year, the Carabao Cup, the Gummy Bear Cup, could be played without 7 Premier League teams because of the delayed start to the season. The Champions League and Europa League dates, qualifying dates are set to clash with the Cup. I think actual cup dates would be conflicting as well. So the English teams that compete in Europe might not be part of the League Cup, which makes the League Cup really not worth anybody's time. But there's sponsorships.
That's a warm gummy bear cup at the bottom of your seat.
If Carabao is still happy with throwing their gummy bears and energy drinks at this thing, well, cool, take the money and have fun. Mm-hmm. You threw this in from Pep Guardiola this morning. Leroy Sané has rejected to extend his contract. June 30th, I'm assuming?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so if he leaves, he's walking on a free. Eric Garcia, due to the concussion rules and protocols about return to play, he's out for 7 to 10 days. But good signs on everything with Garcia's recovery. Scotland, we mentioned it with Hibernian probably mothballing their academy. They are talking about pay cuts. A lot of clubs have mentioned it. Aberdeen is addressing what their financials are going to look like. Hibs might shut everything down temporarily below their first team. That might be all they're able to fund. That's, again, the reality. In France, the league board voted unanimously to maintain the format of 20 teams. So remember, the courts said your protocol ends on June 30th to say you have to have 20 teams. That's why you should revisit not relegating teams. Well, now the board has extended the next season. It's only 20 teams, so that puts a stop to the stop of relegation for Amiens and Toulouse. Now do they go to the courts and challenge it in a different way? We will see. That's what's happening in Scotland. It's a mess. And one thing that's come out in Scotland that gives you a little bit of a different look at it, there is reportedly in the way that Hearts and Partick Thistle are challenging this, would not just be to prevent the relegation, but to prevent the promotion of teams that had earned promotion. And that's where a lot of people are pointing to say, see, that's not right. There was a really good piece at the BBC that I recommend going to check out, talking about how everybody is making Hearts and Ann Budge out to be the bad guys in this scenario, because there's a lot of people you can look at Hearts and say, man, they've been run poorly. Okay, that's fine. That's reasonable. There's no way you can point at Partick Thistle and push ill will towards them. Like, I think they got relegated by 2 points. They might have had a game in hand, or they had a bunch of games to sort that out. There's nothing about them being forced into relegation that's good, but nobody wants to talk about that. They're only pointing at Hearts as like, oh, Hearts is so bad. They're bad. They're bad. Well, it's a complicated scenario across the board, because it's not just Hearts that's going to get punished by this. We'll see. Netherlands, so looking at scheduling for next year, this would not shock me if other leagues look at it too. Edwin van der Sar, the director at Ajax, has recommended that the top games, the big derbies, the big regional derbies, the big games in the calendar year, push them all after the winter break next year. Because what's more likely to have fans at that point than the beginning of the season? Yep. Push all the big games then. Could you see the Premier League? Could you see other leagues do that? Yeah, I think it's a conversation that'll be had. They don't have a start date for the new competition. They are hoping to start sometime in September. Rostov, we mentioned them in Russia. They play Sochi today. The oldest player in the team, 19 years old. Youngest, 16. Reason why? The whole team is quarantined. 6 positive tests. Everybody's quarantined. So they're playing the U19 team, essentially, the U20 team, whatever their junior team is. They are playing the match, and that's kind of what you have to do right now. I wonder what's going to come out about how that happened, to have that many positive tests, because that hasn't happened with any team in any league since coming back to play like this. We'll see. Brazil, it's still a mess. This is the part that blows my mind about Brazil. So, to recap quickly,
I was going to say, other than all of it?
No, there's a new piece to it. The arbitrator said you can start playing as soon as yesterday. Well, the first game back is going to be today. Flamengo taking on Bangu in the Carioca Championship, which is the Rio State Championship, behind closed doors at the Maracanã. So this was announced just 2 days ago. So 2 days ago, you can play, you're playing. Flamengo, because the state championship's short, you've got a bunch of groups. Flamengo gets to the semifinals if they win this game. They started training last week against official guidance, so they're going to have a slight advantage. They broke the rules to start training. They're going to get the advantage. Botafogo is scheduled to play on Monday. They have not returned to training, so they have threatened to take it to the courts. They say it's not safe to train. They have not prepared to train, so they haven't done the testing required. Botafogo's technical staff have joined in this fighting the state federation. They've threatened to resign if they are not given an extension to train until June 30th. So like 2 weeks of training, or not even that, a little bit more than a week. To make it even worse, so you're rushing back, you're playing behind closed doors. There's no benefit to that outside of TV, right? It's not going to be on TV. There's an ongoing dispute between Flamengo and Globo, the TV company. They can't agree on the issues going on, so nobody's going to be able to watch it. So you're forcing a game to happen behind closed doors with no proper training time for no reason. None. Other than Flamengo started training early and broke the rules, and they feel like they have an advantage, and they'll get to the semifinals. Yeah, that's why Brazilian football is a mess. Australia looks to have gotten things sorted out. Fox has reportedly agreed to an arrangement, $32 million. It's a reduction of the old contract. It's only going to be through next season, so they are getting out of 2 years of it and getting out of about $25 million in the 1 year. So they're getting out total about $140 million of the deal. But it buys the A-League and the Federation some time. And the W-League will be televised next season as part of all this. So that is good. It's also potentially going to change the schedule of the A-League in terms of the calendar. It would move from a summer league to a winter league. Finish out the current season. And then the 2021 season would begin in December and finish in July, which would allow them in 22 to be in the calendar year totally. Which, remember, the World Cup's going to be in November in 2022, so that makes sense. It would also put them in alignment with the grassroots game, which some say could lead to Pro-Rel in Australia, which they've never had. The W League's in it. The World Cup qualifying matches are in this. Any Australian women's national team friendlies that take place would be included. It doesn't include their version of the FA Cup, which could be the test case for streaming it on their own, doing it all in-house, and that's what some people are speculating about. I mentioned Pro-Rel there specifically because of news and because of things. We're not going to be able to dig deep into Tafka's opus. It is on our website, soccerdownhere.net. It is Tafka's way of looking at Pro-Rel in MLS and USL. It's a creative solution. It's a way that I don't think I've seen anything about anybody recommending a setup like this. My concern would be that it is that different, that it would be hard to follow, it would be complicated. But go read it. It is long. You might want to make sure you've got a meal, maybe a bowl of soup, maybe a 3-course meal to go through all of it. But it's on soccerdownhere.net. We'll talk about it more next week in detail. But please go check that out. Tafka's done 3 of these leading up to this. He recaps the previous ones. Those are going to get posted on the new version of the website as well. I've got to upload the back side of that. So give me a little bit of time on that. I'll try to get it up over the weekend. But the new opus is there. It's about Pro-Rel, what it could look like in the U.S. in a hybrid type of format. Check it out. Tweet at us, tweet at him about what you think, and we'll talk more about it on Monday in detail. Blame LGP, Tafka. Blame Sholos.
A couple of things on my notes before we go. Just to clarify, Leroy Sané real quick, entering the final year of his deal at Manchester City. Bayern Munich is leading the chase. He just doesn't want to sign an extension. Guardiola's confirmed the club have made several offers. He has no interest in signing a new deal with Manchester City. Okay. Also in England, the Premier League seems to be now butting heads with Sky and BT because Sky and BT want to have all of the games over free television until folks return in the stands, and the Premier League might be balking at that.
Well, I think the UK government has pushed for those games to be on free TV as part of all of the trade-offs, so I don't think that's that easy to solve.
According to our friends at the Times, the Premier League is telling all of their video assistant referees to be more confident after what happened in the Sheffield United game, as you were saying yesterday.
Yeah, you gotta. I get it. There's never been a question with goal line technology. Well, now there is, so got to change the mindset a little bit. If you think there's a problem, then get it checked and get it right, because that's the whole goal of all this. Get it right.
Michelle Not a Lab has a couple of injuries at the back. 3 players are, I think, lost for the season as Daniel Farka tries his summer resurrection to try to get above the pro rel line, and it's going to be even tougher with all of those injuries in defense. Sean Dyche warned his front office about the possibility of not having all of his players who didn't want to sign short-term deals past June 30th. So he's concerned about having everybody as a part of his roster for the run-in. Twit of the day. I didn't have the chance to tell you about Twit of the day yet.
Oh, yeah. You said you had a few of these.
Well, I just one major twit. And, we've been discussing, as the article decides to reload, courtesy of our friends at the Daily Mail, Jose Mourinho claims Dele Alli has been treated unfairly compared to other footballers to commit indiscretions during the coronavirus lockdown. You'll recall that Alli has been fined and banned for 1 game by the Football Association because of a joke video he filmed about the virus, which was shared among friends on social media, leaked online. He's going to miss Tottenham's return to the Premier League against Manchester United. So, Jose Mourinho decided to say, I feel very, very sorry that he's not playing. He's a player that works so hard during all this period, and he's really frustrated that he cannot play the first match. I don't want to say much more than I don't think he deserves a 1-match ban compared with wrong behaviors at much bigger dimensions that happened during this period without any consequences. So Jose
he deserved the 1-game ban, and others who did stupid things deserve suspensions too. But he deserved the ban.
Yes. So that's why I had Jose Mourinho as my twit of the day.
Man, your twit description, it's pretty easy to get on your list.
Damn right.
Not that big of a deal.
He deserved the 1-game ban. Jose Mourinho, stop talking.
Jose's defending his player. That's what you're supposed to do. I mean,
stop talking.
No.
He deserved the ban.
Hold on. Yes, he deserved the ban. Nobody's arguing that. But Jose Mourinho's also saying that his player's a good guy. That's what a manager does. Like, this is not a twit situation. This is just Jose Mourinho knows what he's doing. He's smart. He knows exactly what he's doing. How is this going to play for a guy like Dele Alli? He's going to say, man, my manager stood up for me. I'm going to go run through a wall for him. It's a game. You know that.
Good. Run through a wall after this one.
That again, John, stop being literal. Jose knows how the game is played. He got suspended. Other people should have been suspended. That's true. I'm with that. Mm-hmm. He got suspended, but he's defending his player. What would the alternative be? Jose says, yeah, he should have got suspended. That was really stupid. What's that going to do? It's not going to help the relationship
Defend your
with him.
Player, but at the same time, sit here and say he deserves to sit out. That's my hook here. That he deserves to sit out for the 1-match ban.
Your barrier for being a twit is very low, because I don't think what Jose said is offensive. He was defending his player. You kind of know he's going to do that. That's it. It's not a big deal.
Okay, then how about Paul Pogba's Rolls-Royce getting seized by police after he was pulled over after driving illegally with a French license plate?
He should have got a license plate. I think he's got the money to get his license plate. He's been there for a while, unless his car is brand new. That's just dumb. I mean, am I going to rake him over the coals for being dumb and not getting his paperwork done? Not really. It's dumb.
It's
It's a
dumb.
bad
It's
look.
not a twit.
It's a bad look.
It's not twit. It's dumb.
It's dumb. Dumb twit to me is like a whole nother level. Like just doing something dumb or trying to manipulate things and playing the media game like Mourinho does. That's a different level. It's not a big deal. You kind of expect it. The Pogba thing, I mean, at some point, man, Manchester United's got to move on.
Yeah. Kieran Gill for the Daily Mail before I get to Katie Weaver's comment about today. Referees do not believe Hawkeye's explanation of how goal line technology malfunctioned at Villa Park after it passed all of its pre-match tests, including pushing the ball behind the post. So they don't believe Hawkeye's explanation.
Well, what does it matter? You believe it or you don't believe it. It happened.
Yeah. Hawkeye said GDS 7 cameras obscured, and they're confused by that claim.
Good. What do you want to do about it?
It's like we don't believe you. We don't believe your
This is turning into, because Scotland does this too. We have to issue a statement about everything. Uh-huh. Why? There's no statement to make. We don't believe you. Well, what does that mean? You're gonna get rid of it? No. Like, what does it mean? It doesn't mean anything. It's just wasting. It's wasting print. To print these out. It's wasting space on the internet. It's a dumb thing to waste your time with. Like, it happened. Now you need to be more careful and not take Hawkeye as 100% accurate. You can put it at 98. You can put it at 97. You can put it at 95%, whatever. And you just have to double check it. That's all. Do it. Stop whining.
In Canada, it looks like Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island is your front runner for a possible CPL tournament. And
okay.
if you in Italy, Maurizio Sarri's job at Juve could be at risk in the wake of the Coppa Italia final loss to Napoli. Quoting once again our friends at the Daily Mail, as players, quote, don't follow him and fans are losing faith.
Yeah, because, I mean, well, he hasn't had very long, but still, he didn't win the first trophy he had an opportunity to. The league is not sealed, and Champions League is where, if he wins the league, I think it'll all be fine. If he wins Champions League, he can walk on water. I mean, like, that's what it's going to come down to. But, no, they didn't look good. We'll see how they look in league play, but they didn't look good. And I didn't get the sense that players weren't following him. Now, that could be a longer-term discussion, but they just didn't look good. Napoli was better. And that's a credit to Gattuso. We'll see if it is a detriment to Sarri. But people have had their knives out for Maurizio Sarri since he left Napoli. I mean, it's a little unfair. I think it's a little harsh. I mean, the guy won the Europa League last year. It's not like he's garbage. But, yeah, he's got to win trophies because that's why he's at Juve.
And Katie Weaver says that Jose Mourinho is not a twit. Hashtag COYS, come on you Spurs today.
He's defending his player, that's all. He knows what he's doing. He knows how to play the media like a fiddle.
And your numbers, courtesy of our friends at Odds Portal, because Premier League is back. Norwich and Southampton at 1 Eastern. Norwich is plus 181. Southampton is at plus 156, so they're looking at a draw there. Tottenham and Manchester United at 315. Tottenham at plus 233 to win. Manchester United at plus 127.
Carlo Ancelotti says Yerry Mina and Fabian Delph will miss the Merseyside derby. It's not going to help Everton in that one. And You mentioned the Locadia loan being extended. That is a big one. Mexico is looking at potentially preseason tournaments in mid-July as a ease back into play. One would be in Guadalajara with Chivas, with Atlas, with Necaxa, and with Mazatlan or Puebla. The other one would be in Mexico City with Club America, Cruz Azul, Pumas, and Toluca. So this is from John Sutcliffe at ESPN and Tom Marshall at Mexico World Cup with the translation there. Your game schedule today, you got a bunch of different places. Norwich and Southampton at 1 o'clock. That's NBC SN. Granada and Villarreal alongside Mallorca and Leganés. Those are both at 1:30 on BN Sports. Fanatis, BN Sports Connect, et cetera, et cetera. Elche and Girona also on BN Sports Extra. You've got Portugal. You've got Guimarães and Moreirense. You have the match with... Let me see. I thought we had it. I thought it was going to be on TV somewhere. Maybe they changed it since I loaded this page. No, 1 o'clock. If you want to try to watch Sochi and Rostov, it's on YouTube. I don't know if it's free in this country to watch on YouTube. You can watch Rostov's U19s.
Oh, that'd be great. Sochi is a minus 1667 in that one, by the way.
Wow. Wow, that sounds like a fabricated number. 3:15, Tottenham and Manchester United. That's NBC SN. 4 o'clock, Sevilla and Barcelona on beIN Sport. And you've also got some... What's that?
Barcelona's only a plus 119 in that
one. That's a tempting one. And you've got some more Portuguese action at 4:15. So lots of stuff to watch. NBC SN beIN will be getting a workout on your television screen starting at 1 o'clock. And maybe a little bit of Russian league, too.
Too.
Thanks for hanging out. A lot of stuff today. Like I said, we'll get into the Opus from Tafka next week. We'll start it on Monday. But go check it out. It's on the website, soccerdownhere.net. Be on the lookout later today for my 1v1 with Rod Underwood. It was a long conversation that went about twice as long as I thought it would, but covered a lot of the what's next conversation on all fronts, on race relations, on getting rid of some of the inequalities in American soccer, dealing with COVID-19, return to play, all of it. It was a pretty wide-ranging discussion with Rod. That'll be up about 1 o'clock on the Soccer Down Here podcast network. Thanks for hanging out with us. We're going to take a break for a weekend. Maybe we'll pop in if crazy stuff happens, like an MLS schedule. Otherwise, we'll see you on Monday. Mucha platio.
Mucha platio.